In a world created by Mike Dell, I guess you would call it Mike Dell's World.
Yep, and that's what I call it. Mike Dell's World for November 25th, 2025. This is episode 431 for those of you keeping score. And it's, of course, the 25th day of NaPodPoMo. After this, I only got 4 more to go, or 5 more to go, whatever. I'm terrible at math, at least today. Anyway, I want to talk about something that in 2 months will be 48 years ago. That's actually sort of amazing to me because I can't believe that I can remember something that happened 48 years ago, but it's true. I was 12 years old, or I was just turning 12 when this event started. In fact, it was the day after my birthday that it really happened, but hey, no big deal. So let me set the scene. I'm 12 years old. Just had a birthday party at my house for my 12th birthday, and Dad went to Little Richard's Pizza. And those of you that are local here in Traverse City, Little Richard's was on Union Street, just down from, just south of the city bike shop in a storefront there. And they did Sicilian square pizza, and it was, fairly famous pizza place around here back in 1978, and of course before and somewhat afterwards. I don't know when they closed, but Little Richard's, I remember I requested that because that was my favorite pizza place. So Dad comes home, and he at the time was driving a 1970 VW bus, and we used to keep the back driveway plowed because we had a pole barn way on the back of the property, and he kept that plowed, and then he plowed a trail down to the house alongside the deck in the back of the house. That was a really long driveway. It was probably 100 yards long, and then he would plow back to the house, which was probably another 50 yards. So, it was a lot of plowing to get there, but we hadn't had a lot of snow that year. Wasn't too bad. And he went to Little Richard's, got pizzas, and decided he would park his VW bus there along the back deck. And anyway, so he was way back down a couple of plowed driveways and parked, and we had the pizza party. And of course, the TV news was talking about a possible blizzard. Now, this is where my memory got fuzzy. 9 and 10 was the TV station, still is, CBS affiliate in Cadillac, Michigan, now moved to Traverse City, but they were originally in Cadillac, Michigan. In fact, their transmitter's still down there, or one of the transmitters. And there was a guy on there, and it wasn't who I think it is. I've done a little research before starting this episode. I always thought it was Bill Spencer that was the weatherman there, but he was not. He came on somewhere in the early 80s and also got the nickname Blizzard Bill. The guy that was there, I don't remember what his name was, but, he had predicted there's a possibility of some lake effect snow, blah, 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 blah. But on Channel 13, WZZM out of Grand Rapids, I think it was Channel 13, or was it Channel 8? I forget, one of the two stations, but we used to get Channel 13 up here because that was before we had an ABC affiliate. So on our cable system, and yes, we had cable. I think we had 8 channels, something like that. WZZM was our ABC affiliate, I believe. Like I said, this is all fuzzy math because I was 12 years old, and a lot of that stuff from 48 years ago is a little fuzzy in the internet's memory as well, because the internet didn't exist then. But anyway, I always thought it was Bill Spencer, but it wasn't. It was, what was his name? And I get his email all the time because he's still at it. Anyway, Bill Steffen, there we go. Bill Steffen was Blizzard Bill as well. And, of course, Bill Spencer also got the nickname Blizzard Bill when he worked in Cleveland. He retired in 2017. That's what I found out about him. But anyway, back to the story. So we had the VW bus there, had a pizza party, all that. And, of course, us kids used to, whenever we'd have snow, we would sit downstairs. We had a stereo, and I don't remember what kind of stereo it was, but, the old stereo receivers, big warm tones and whatever, and it had a blue dial on it. And we would always tune in to one of the local radio stations and wait for the school closing list. Well, we got up that morning on the 26th, and there was no doubt that schools were going to be closed. In fact, the road was closed out in front of the house. And I mean, it was closed. I mean, there was, 3 foot, 4 foot drifts. My mom had a 1973, I had to think about that for a second, VW Beetle. And back then the CB craze was kind of big. So she had an 8-foot whip antenna on the back bumper of her 73 Beetle. And, of course, she parked it in the front driveway. And all we could see of that 8-foot whip was about 3.5 feet of the whip antenna sticking out of the snow. And otherwise, the car was completely buried flat. I mean, you wouldn't even know there was a car there. That's how much snow got dumped. Now, the total of the snow really wasn't that much. I mean, it was a lot, but it wasn't 4 feet, but with the wind, it was. They had winds in the 110 knot range, and that's about 126, 127 miles an hour, and that causes great drifting. And of course, back then we didn't have that many trees around where my folks lived, or where I lived at the time too. And that's still where Mom lives now. But drifting was kind of a big deal, especially, when the lake effect was kicking up, plus the system snow, plus the wind. It was all, kind of the perfect storm. But, man, I'll tell you, that was a lot of snow. And, of course, we had horses, which we were going to build a barn. I think we built the barn in 79. But in 78, we used a barn 2 houses down from us. Neighbors let us use their barn and pasture and everything for the horses. So that was a whole nother thing. I had to snowshoe over there to feed the horses, and I would bring buckets of water out to them. And yeah, that was a whole nother ball of worms. But yeah, it was just incredible. Like, all the roads outside of town were closed. Even in town, they had a lot of trouble. It was, the most amount of drifting and snow I'd ever seen in my life. It was just amazing amount of snow. Of course, I cross-country skied. We had snowmobiles. In fact, the snowmobile we parked up on the barn roof, as I remember it now. Like I said, fuzzy from being a 12-year-old, but maybe we parked the snowmobile up there after this storm because of the snow piles. I don't remember, but anyway, we found the snowmobile, and it was kind of pointless in the powder, so we didn't use that. So we, snowshoed. And I'd snowshoe over to the horses, twice a day with food. Well, if they had the food over there, but I'd have to bring water to them. But I mean, it was closed. The roads, the schools were closed for an entire week because of this, and it took probably 4 days before the road was open. And one of the interesting stories about the road getting open is there was a lady that lived a little further down the road and down another road about 2 miles off of our road, which was not really a main road, but she was kind of way back there. And her husband owned a heavy equipment company. And then we had an excavating company nearby, Brayton's. They're still around, I think. But Brayton's wanted to buy a new front end loader from this, I think it was called Northern Equipment at the time. And so about 3 days into the storm or into the cleanup, he said, well, if you can get over to the lot there, go ahead and grab one of the front end loaders and then bring it by and bring my wife a carton of cigarettes. And that's, the lady that lived down the road there, ran out of cigarettes. So that front end loader came down our road, opened up our road, not, one lane, not wide like the county road plows would do, but opened up a trail and got all the way down to her house and gave her a carton of cigarettes. And on the way back, he made lots of money plowing out people's driveways. And we had him plow ours, not ours, our main driveway, but the driveway up to the horses. And then plus he had the road, so we had a lot easier, didn't have to use snowshoes to get up to the barn, but we didn't have the money or the inclination to have him plow our driveway out, which would have been a lot easier than what we did end up doing. But yeah, my cousin and I were roughly the same age, and we lived about a mile apart, and we would cross country ski, and it was a grand old time. But when it came time to clear out the driveways, first ours, my dad had a 1970 John Deere 110 lawn tractor with and I only know this because I just got rid of the tractor, gave it to the neighbor behind where Dad lived. But 1970 John Deere 110 with a snowblower attachment on. It was a single stage snow thrower, 37 inches wide. And we started up at the pole barn and started plowing towards the road. And my cousin and I would knock the snowbank down, and then Dad would blow it out, and then we would knock it down and he'd blow it out. And we did that for 2 straight days before we got to the road. And then we went back and did the trail over to my dad's VW bus that had been snow locked in the backyard. Anyway, about 4 days after the storm, the roads, the county plows came through, widened out the roads, and it wasn't too terrible. It took us 3 or 4 days with that little John Deere lawn tractor. And of course, at that time we got the snowmobile out, so we'd snowmobile up, get gas for it, up to the little store a couple miles away. And my uncle, who lived over on Long Lake, on the south end of Long Lake at the time, he snowshoed over just because he was bored. And yeah, it was quite the time. We heated with wood at the time, as we discussed in a previous episode. All the wood was in the house, so that was easy. And I just remember Dad would have a pot of bean soup or a pot of chili or some sort of soup on the wood stove all the time, sitting up on top of the wood stove, and he'd come in after 2 or 3 hours of moving snow. And I tell you what, there was nothing better than a big old hot steaming bowl of chili or bean soup or whatever it was. I don't specifically remember, but he'd always had something going on there, and he always had a pot of water on there. It wasn't boiling or anything, but you could, do coffee or whatever. And we never really lost power. I think maybe we lost power the first night when the winds were kicked up, but the power came back fairly quick. I don't really remember the power outage that much, but I do remember, just navigating the snow. We had a deck that went, pretty much all the way around the house, or at least around half of it on one side and in the front and the back. And, had to move the snow off of the deck, and then, you push some snow off the deck and then get the snowblower out to blow it out of where it landed. And, even shoveled the roof, which almost never had to do there because of the wind. But again, it drifted up. It was incredible. I mean, just absolutely nuts. I've never seen snow like that since. Now we've had a fair amount of snow, but never all at once like that, and never totally paralyzing the roads and all that. That was just beyond normal. And this blizzard really, it covered many states, and there's lots of stories out there. But I'm telling my story from when I was 12. Let's see. I did write down a couple of things just so I wouldn't forget. But no, I got it all, or at least I got all that part of it. But that year was incredible. After that, it was like every Sunday or every Monday. No, what was it? No, it was Thursday or Friday. We would get a blizzard, and generally we didn't go to school on Friday or Monday for the rest of that snow season, until February. And I mean, the snowbanks were, by the end of the season, along the roads, the snowbanks were probably 8 foot tall. And that's no exaggeration. That was a ton of snow, and it just lasted and lasted and lasted and lasted. I do remember, before the road was completely clear, another uncle of mine, where my cousin lived, and one that skied over and helped me plow snow. Of course, we plowed him out, and he had a Jeep, an old CJ7. I think it was brand new at the time too, or it was pretty close. Maybe it was a 76, but it was pretty new. Had a plow on the front of it, and but this was too much snow for that vehicle and the plow, at least until we got it at least broke up. But anyway, we made the first trip into town to get groceries and beer and cigarettes and whatever the hell else. Back then, everybody smoked. Come on, I didn't, but that was kind of the thing. And I remember riding into town in that Jeep, just looking at all the snow. I mean, it was pretty, but man, oh man, it was a ton. And went down to Meyer Thrifty Acres. Now called Meyer, but it's a big grocery everything store, kind of think of Walmart, but not quite. But went down there and just, filled the back of that Jeep up. Me and him went down there. We were in 4-wheel drive the whole time. And as I said in my winter driving thing, I recommend 4-wheel drive if you have it. But I remember that trip into town. And, of course, it was still blowing and drifting a bit. So, you'd go into little blasts of whiteout. And, of course, a Jeep isn't really the warmest thing in the world. And the defrosters didn't work very well. Neither did they on VWs that we had. But anyway, that storm was, one for the history books. And I just can't believe it was that long ago. Something interesting, there's a famous picture there's a couple famous pictures that were in the Record Eagle, our local newspaper, and I'm having trouble tracking them down, but I do have one in front of me, which I will put in the show notes over at mikedell.com. But, and I can't tell which theater this is. It was either the Michigan Theater or the State Theater on Front Street. And you could see the big drift on the sidewalk under the marquee. And playing in the theater, first run was Oh God with George Burns and John Denver. So that was a picture of that marquee and all the snow on Front Street. And, what was on Front Street was far less than what we got out of town over by Long Lake. So... And then there was another thing that happened. I think it was around the same time, but maybe not exactly. There was a school ship out in the bay, in West Bay. And it wasn't the current one. There's a current school ship there at the NMC's Maritime Academy called the State of Michigan. But this was a different boat, and it was their school ship. And it capsized in the bay in the ice. And it was laying on its side in the shallow water on West Bay and on the front page of the newspaper. And yes, newspapers were a thing back then. I guess they still are, sort of, kind of. But Record Eagle's around anyway. But it's a picture of that boat laying on its side, and somebody'd spray painted on the bottom or painted on the bottom, this side down. But they were able to flip it back up after not too much, and didn't really hurt the ship too much, I don't think. But again, fuzzy 12-year-old memory from 48 years ago. But I do remember seeing that ship out there as well. We finally got back to normal life, and go by there periodically. But that was quite the storm. And yes, I am old enough to know and remember the blizzard of '78. And Wikipedia has an article about it, and the title of the article is "The Great Blizzard of '78." We just call it the Blizzard of 1978 or Blizzard of '78. Other names for it were the Cleveland Super Bomb. That was crazy, but it was the perfect blizzard. And again, I don't know if nowadays it would be as big a deal. I know Buffalo, New York gets an amazing amount of snow, but it doesn't sound like it was as impactful as this storm was, at least around here. And I know Indiana and Ohio and some of the other surrounding areas got it pretty good too. And I think even the East Coast got some of it. I wonder if it was one of those nor'easters that stayed strong and just kept going. But anyway, that's my remembrances of the blizzard of '78. And, that winter was great because we didn't go to school all that much. We had lots of snow days. And snow days are a whole nother thing, up here. Nowadays, if I look out my window and I see 4 inches of snow on the hood of my truck, chances are they're going to call a snow day or at least a delay. They're wusses compared to what we were. We went to school in some crazy weather, but hey, that's okay. Hey, if it works for them, it works for them. That's fine. So, hey, if anybody that's old enough and was around here at the time, let me know what your experience was with the blizzard of '78.